In this episode of the Wow Party podcast, I'm joined by Nicole Areu, the founder and CEO of Green Vegan Bags. Nicole recognized the challenges faced by ethical and eco-conscious consumers when searching for stylish, sustainable alternatives to traditional leather products. With extensive experience in retail and e-commerce, Nicole embarked on a mission to redefine the shopping experience, making it easier for consumers to make conscious choices without stress or guesswork. Recently, it was announced that Green Vegan Bags will be featured with PETA in the Backstage Latin Grammy Gift Lounge in Miami, where presenters and performers will receive a vegan handbag of their choice, spotlighting the brand as a one-stop shop for vegan bags and wallets. Today, we dive into her journey as an entrepreneur, the challenges of launching a sustainable business, and the importance of transparency in ethical fashion. Let's get this party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stefanie LaHart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the show, Nicole. I am so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and I will tell people right now, the way I found Nicole was through the PETA Business Network, which I had the opportunity to join this year. And when I did, I was suddenly introduced to all these amazing businesses that were so in line with this podcast. It was literally like they wrote my podcast interview list for me. So thank you, PETA, for that. And, just being able to go through your business, Nicole, and see your website and see exactly what you're doing, I was like, whoa, this girl has it together. So I couldn't wait to talk to you. So we have so much to cover. And I know we're both excited to get into it. So I really want to start from the beginning because you know what? I have to say, yours is one of the businesses and one of the websites that I could easily see another, maybe startup or a person who's thinking about starting a business and be like, oh my God, they have it so together, and feeling maybe a little intimidated because you've really, really nailed it in the vegan business sector. And by the way, Nicole, brilliant, calling your company Green Vegan Bags. First of all, SEO gold, which you already know. And secondly, purely descriptive about what they're getting in. So let's just start at the beginning. What inspired you to start Green Vegan Bags? And how did your background in retail and e-commerce influence the creation of this brand? Because you didn't start from zero, like you knew what you were doing.
Well, yes. And that's part of the reason that I chose, to create this company as opposed to, say, a restaurant or something that I know nothing about, because I have a higher chance of, getting across my message to everybody if I know what I'm doing already. So, I worked in e-commerce for a long time, and I wanted it to be more than a business. I felt like starting my own business would be the next step, but I really wanted it to be something that I was passionate about and something that would make the world a better place. And so I guess I kind of had this realization. It was with my dog because I had gotten a dog and I needed a new bag to carry around with treats and everything for the dog. At this point in my life, I had pretty much just given up on handbags. It was just such a hassle to shop them that I just was using my kid's book bag. But then that was also not convenient when you're taking a dog, around on a walk. So I started looking for a bag, and I just ran into the same problems I've been running into for years. So that was where I was like, oh, and I put two and two together and was like, that's what I need to do.
You're like, I need a bag, so I know other people also need bags.
Yes, basically, because the trouble is, everything that I would come across was either really cheap garbage plastic or really, really out of reach. It might be really nice, but I just can't drop, $500 to $1,000 on a handbag, especially to walk my dog, So the other problem is that you go from site to site to site. And it's like you get one thing here, and then you're just circling around sites and you don't even remember what you saw first and you can't compare. And there's this material and that material, but they're all spread out. There's no just one place to just go and say, oh, look, I have all these different types of bags and all I have to do is choose one. The work's already been done. I don't have to like spend hours and hours looking online. So that was how I came up with the idea.
That is very true. I sometimes feel like the online shopping experience is just overwhelming. Like there's just too many choices and you're like, I just want to go to one central area and be able to buy what I need and kind of move on with my day. And
Right.
the other thing I'll add to that real quickly is a pet peeve of mine is when I'm looking at a product and it looks like, oh, okay, this is like a vegan product. This is great. And then I'll read the details and they'll be like, oh, leather accents. And I'm finding this with like running shoes suddenly. They'll make the logo in leather. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, I won't buy the shoe now. So
This is
weird,
actually
right?
true. And they don't label things either. If you go in person shopping, the labels are not always there. They don't always tell you it's leather. It might not even look like leather because maybe it's cheap leather, but they don't tell you it's leather. So it just it becomes a big hassle. And the other thing is too, when you're buying products that are leather, like you don't know what you're getting either. Not that it matters for me because I'm vegan, but a lot of people don't realize that is not just cows you're buying. You're buying stingrays, bobcats, kangaroos. You just don't know. And there's just no transparency there. So even on the little accent, you don't know what that accent is either. So the whole process is just extremely frustrating.
It is. And that's the thing too. There's no transparency. You don't know what you're buying. And some people are like, well, I'll buy this, but not that. And it's like, you don't know what you're getting. You have absolutely no idea. And I'm also finding that also within what we're calling like the vegan, I guess, category, the vegan leather category. With first of all, I wish we had picked a different word than leather because that always throws me off. Because now everybody throws around the word leather, and I'm like, what do you consider leather? Is this animal leather? Because if you go and buy a car now, they're like, it's leather interior. You're like, you mean vegan leather? Because there aren't many leather interiors we're actually seeing, which I'm glad because I mean,
Yes.
let me tell you, if I'm with a friend and we're going somewhere and I get in their car and they're like, oh no, this is leather, I'm like, I won't get in their car. I'm like, absolutely not. Like I'm vegan like inside and out, which is my own little thing. But tell me first, we're going to get back into the story of the vegan leather products, like what the materials are. But
Mhm.
I want to hear from you, your personal journey. What inspired you to decide you were going to live a vegan lifestyle?
Well, it's been so long. It's hard to say, but I guess it mainly started with when I was very young. The first time I found out what that chicken was chicken, I was very young, like 7 years old, and I didn't realize that it was the same thing. I thought it was one of those words that was you use for multiple things, and it means something else. So when my mom told me that, I was pretty horrified. Um, and they told me I had to eat it or I would die. So I didn't really understand. And then at some point, when I was like in my teens, I got a magazine. There was an article from PETA, and they were talking about some experiment where they had scrambled monkeys' brains and asked people to write in. So I wrote in like snail mail. I think I was like 13 or 14 and wrote it in, mailed it in. And then I started getting, of course, stuff from PETA. And I started reading it and realized, like, oh, people don't have to eat meat. Like, that was just not true. So that was kind of what started that. And then pretty much, once I became an adult and I was able to buy my own food, I started buying my own food. And shortly after that, I moved to LA. So that helped, of course. I started vegetarian, but I didn't really eat a lot of dairy and I didn't eat eggs at the time either. So I was pretty close to vegan, but moving to LA certainly helped, at the time because other cities were not as vegan. They didn't have as many options. So that really kind of kick-started me and I've just been going ever since. I've worked a lot with rescues and things like that and connected a lot with animals. So that has kept me from, I mean, I don't know, to me, like eating them or wearing them is just gross at this point.
I totally understand that. PETA was also my launching pad to my journey. And I also discovered them when I was in my teens, about 16 years old. I had a friend who was already had decided she was going to be a vegetarian, and she had found out about PETA, and she introduced me. She gave me a magazine, and like you, the visuals of it and the messaging, like immediately, I remember the cover I saw. It was bunnies that were lined up in a laboratory having their eyes, when they used to slit their eyelids so they couldn't close their eyes, and they were putting chemicals in them to test chemicals. And I was so horrified. And I remember had one of those really weird moments of looking at the world saying, other people know this is happening, right? Like how are you allowing this to happen? And here
Right.
I am, a 16-year-old kid feeling entirely powerless about everything. And I'm like, wait, adults know about this and this is okay? And that really started my journey. So like you, I started with vegetarianism and then, moved to LA and became a vegan.
Oh yeah.
Same thing. But now, I mean, that was back in the 90s. So,
Yes, me
the world
too.
has changed a lot and people understand, like you said, you have a choice. You don't have to eat that stuff. And going back to what you said about linking the word chicken to an actual chicken, notice how crafty the meat industry became, though, because they rebranded a cow as a steak. Oh, you eat a steak. And then it takes
Right.
kids a long time to make the connection of, no, your steak is the living cow. The cow
Right.
goes moo. That's what's on your plate. Oh, and by the way, here's the horrific journey that it took to get there. So
Right.
I really, am one of those people that thinks social media has been awesome to get this messaging out that people understand and make these connections. Because I will also tell you, I grew up in Philadelphia and it took me, I think, until I was 20 years old to even see a cow in person. And that really became honestly like a moment for me. I'm like, oh, farm animals are real. Like, I mean, I lived in a city. I didn't, and now we have so many more opportunities to make that connection. So I think we're growing as a society, and I love that. And again, I love seeing business owners like you that are like, yes, and I can start a business that totally supports my ethical and my, my mission and the way I live my life, and,
Mm.
do something for good. Oh, and also make an awesome living. So, let's talk about the actual journey for you about going from the idea of I want to start a vegan handbag line to like how did you do it? Because you do have you said you had a background in e-commerce and retail. How did you start your journey then from saying I want to start this business to actually where do I source my products? How do I do it? What did that look like for you?
It was very difficult. It was time consuming, I want to say, not difficult. I kind of had to sit down and break it down of what do I need to do first and where do I need to be. So I guess the first step that before I did anything else was to find out if these products really exist, because I'm not a maker, and not only that, there's so many different, I feel like I want to bring a lot of products together and support small businesses and women owned businesses as well. So I had to see if these products existed, and if they did, are they available to be resold? So I started with that, and just gathering that data, looking into like, are people interested in this? Is it something that's trending on Google? Reaching out to the vegan community, just basically like that, just trying to gather more information. And then from there, starting to say, okay, this looks good. This looks like something that I can do. So let's get together, a business name, a website, and since I've built stores before on Shopify, I already knew how to do that part. I knew like the back end, I guess you could say, pretty well. So I just needed to really research the products. And that's part of what's very hard too, is as we just discussed, is looking into products because they're not always transparent. So I don't want to get anything from a company that sells leather, even if it's upcycled leather. So I might come across something that looks really cool, and I look and there's a bunch of, non-leather products. Some of them are not, I wouldn't call vegan leather, but they're just not leather. And they look really cool and they're sustainable and everything. And then all of a sudden I see like, oh, wait, here's another section. There's upcycled leather. Can't do that. So that's probably the hardest part, has been looking into what bags to sell and what companies I can buy from ethically, as far as it goes. But that was basically my journey, starting looking for the products and then move towards actually building up the store and everything.
Okay, so Green Vegan Bags then is more of a marketplace where you're sourcing from other companies, right?
Well, they're not selling it themselves, yeah. But
Oh,
so I'm a retailer, so it's kind of like a one-stop shop for all the vegan bags. So you're not having to go to different places looking for all the different styles and all the different kinds and all the different materials, and you have readily available, you can readily see what's available as opposed to spending hours looking and looking for things you may not have even known existed. Like I didn't know that upcycled inner tube was a thing. And then I found that and was like, oh my gosh, these are so cool. Like I would have never known, Other people probably don't know either, they should know about this. So I feel like like a lot of this stuff is um almost a secret. So it needs to be more out there. Like I want to bring it more to the mainstream, like a little one stop, like a little department store of vegan stuff.
yeah, I'm so glad that you bought the upcycled inner tube bags because I saw that on your website and I thought they were so cool. And you guys listening to the show out there, you have to go look at it later because it literally looks like they're like made from tires. They're the ones you're talking about, right?
Yes.
So, first of all, so super trendy and cool and edgy, which I love because girl, I'm a punk rocker at heart. That's where in my high school days, the girl I mentioned, she was my punk rock girlfriend, Joanne out there, who by the way, I forgot to mention, actually works for PETA now. Like she's living the life.
Oh, how
Um,
cool.
yeah, so when I saw those bags, I was like, oh, that's so cool. They're like so like, punk rock and trendy, and I really
Yeah.
love that. And I love the fact it was upcycled because I just had a very interesting conversation in an earlier podcast episode that's already published with Susie Borlito of Sustainable Works. And what Sustainable Works does, they are a 501c3 that works specifically with businesses to help them turn their business to a more sustainable, what do you call it? Sorry, I just flubbed there. They turn businesses to a more sustainable model. And specifically in our conversation, she brought that up about upcycling stuff. Instead of everybody jumping on the bandwagon of like, everything should be made from bamboo. She's like, no, bamboo's a virgin resource that you end up just depleting the same way as we did everything else. It's buy stuff that's already made, like reuse what we already have. And I'm a big, big fan of that. And I love to see that also on your website. So, that was such a great thing. So, is that something you're looking more for now to have these upcycled products be available?
Yes, yeah, and I also have the recycled vegan leather, which upcycled is always more sustainable, but recycled you're still using the materials that were already created, so that still saves in the environment. But yes, looking for I'm always looking for more, but I'm kind of trying to see, what is it that people really, really love, so I'm still kind of in that process as well. Like which
Yeah.
styles do they love? What are people really looking for, so I haven't added any new ones yet, but I'm going to be soon.
Hmm. So in that process, then, how are you finding what your customers are interested in? Do you do focus groups? Do you do outreach? Are you working with influencers? What does that journey look like to figure out, hey, what do people really want to buy?
Honestly, well, I do a lot of like since I'm on the back end a lot, I do look at analytics. What are people looking for? What are people adding to their carts? Stuff like that. But also, I'm talking to the community. So when I'm out, like at the Animal Rights March, or wherever I'm at the rescues, I'm asking people like, what do they like? What do they think of bags? I do have people looking at my site telling me this is awesome. This is and giving me some feedback on that. So that helps more on like a personal level because data is data, but also just getting personal feedback from people is really great.
Yeah, and I can imagine anytime any of your bags are featured in any of the magazines, they must immediately sell out. Like I'm sure that carry bag that you have on your website, because I think that was in a few magazines, did
I,
that get sold out right away? Because
I've
as soon
had
as
a
I saw it, I was like, I wanted it.
yeah, and I've had a couple featured on magazines and they usually sell pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's just the power of, I think, a curated collection for you, which I think having stuff out in the press is very helpful. So speaking of like the press and marketing and things like that, what does your marketing look like for green vegan bags? How are you reaching out to your audience? How are you getting the word out about your awesome marketplace?
Well, marketing is like a trial and error thing, as I'm sure you know. So every business is different. So what works for one business might not work for another. And you kind of have to try a lot of different things. Advertising is really not enough ever. So I have done a lot of advertising. But in addition, like doing a podcast, also working, being a bit PETA business friend, getting out in their newsletters, getting into gift guides, going out in the community, doing, I've done a couple of in-person sales at a couple of different places. Just, I think getting out and meeting people is extremely powerful. It's more powerful than people realize. And then having other people that spreading the word of how much they love your bags, that's very powerful. So you kind of have to combine all of these things and keep coming up with new innovative ideas of how to get the word out about your company. So it's an ongoing process. It's always evolving. Like, what else can I do? What else can I do?
Yeah, you really nailed it. Marketing is all about trial and error because it is true. You have to try different things, see what sticks, see what's working for your brand at that time. I know frequently we'll look at bigger brands and think, oh, well, I'll just do what they do, but they're at a different level and that's not the same. Like what's working for a very big brand that everybody knows the name of, not necessarily going to work for a smaller brand. So back to what I said earlier, brilliant on you calling your business vegan green bags, or was it, wait, yeah, green
Green
vegan
vegan.
bags because so I started my career as a web designer, a web developer. So I'm still super into like old school hardcore SEO. When I saw that name, I'm like, girl, you kind of own the space there. Because if I just search on Google for green vegan bags, I mean, you're going to show up because you have the URL. And people
Yeah.
don't realize that all the time. They try and come up with some super clever name. And then you're like, well, nobody's ever going to search for that kind of name. So especially with something like you, I thought, whoa, she knows what she's doing. And then like, I saw you were using a Shopify site. I'm like, good for you. You really, laid the groundwork. So I think, again, from the outside, it looks, wow, she really just nailed it from the get-go. But let me ask you, because there's always what do you think's your biggest challenge that you faced since starting this company?
I think that the biggest challenge has been since I started the company has been knowing has been actually what we talked about was knowing what works for your company. Certain things like the name of my site, which I'm, I'm glad to hear you say that because I did it obviously was intentional and I was thinking the same thing that you were thinking, when I was seeing other sites was like, how's anyone going to find them, which is another problem in the vegan space. But I think the biggest obstacle has been finding out what is going to work for your brand and your company. Again, because it's trial and error. So you're going to, any company is going to spend time and money on things that don't work. And that's just part of it. I mean, you just kind of have to know that if you don't try something, you're not going to know if it works or not. So you figuring that out, and I think that now I'm kind of at a place where I'm figuring that out. So that's one thing. And the other obstacle that I've had is patience. So having patience to just keep taking the steps and like knowing that all of this takes time, that's patience with just there's not enough hours in the day, as I'm sure to get everything done. So knowing that I'm not going to get everything that I need to do done today, I need to have patience that this is going to take longer. This project's going to take longer than I want it to take, which also means that the visibility is going to take longer than it might, I might want it to, or the results that I'm trying to get from whatever my actions are going to take longer than I want it to, because that's just how it goes.
That is so true. And if there's one thing that I can impart to our audience in every single podcast I do is patience and consistency, because you
Yes.
have to do the steps, you have to put in the work, and you have to keep trying new things. And that's frequently why a lot of small businesses fail, because people get discouraged. You're like, it's not working. I'm wasting my time. Where everybody starts small. That's, the truth. Everybody starts small and figuring stuff out, step by step. And like you, I really found that, finding my tribe, my network has helped me so much. So let's talk about the PETA Business Network because I love them so much. I found them this year, which I found was so funny because I've been a member of PETA forever. And I was just on their website and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I can join. And it was funny because when I told my friend who works at PETA about it, she's like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot to mention that to you. And I'm like, girl, you could have mentioned that before. So I joined it. And like I said, I was started reaching out to all these great business owners like you. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so seen. Like, this is so great. So let's talk a little bit about just, having those alliances within I guess the groups that mean the most to you, because I know you've done a lot of nonprofit work. You're very active in animal charities and animal support groups and rescues. And, what does that look like for you tying that in? Because you're actually a member of the Florida Animal Rescue Alliance.
Yes, yes. Well, that's kind of funny how that whole thing started. But you know, I started the business, and not too long after I started it, another goal that I had was to get back into rescue and working at sanctuaries. And somebody that I knew had mentioned um, another place, a sanctuary around here. So I saw they were having a volunteer event, and I went down um, to join the event. And when I walked in, they were wearing PETA shirts, and I was like, "Whoa, what?" So it turned out it was a vegan, rescue, and I met everybody there, and I just kept volunteering. And so I started, I was looking for somewhere that I could give back to, which there's plenty of places, but that also makes it very overwhelming. So when I got to know them better and I saw their mission, it's comprised of solely volunteers, and it was completely grassroots, and all of the money goes directly to the animals, that I started donating, and I started showing up to volunteer as well. So at one point, Carol, the president, who's also a good friend of mine, she asked me if I would want to join as a board member because one of the board members had moved. So I was like, okay, sure, let's do this. And I think with the marketing experience that I have, I'm helping with that. So, but that's also another, avenue that they know that I am also giving back to the to the rescue. So a lot of other people in our network will buy bags if they need a bag because they also know a portion of the profits goes back to the rescue as well. So it's all kind of come full circle. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice when everything in your life aligns perfectly like
Yeah.
that. So you feel like, okay, I'm doing this and it directly affects that, and then it comes back this way. The same in my business. I look for charities to give to that are doing the work that, I think is important and that also align with you being ethical and vegan. And
Yeah.
like we said in the beginning, it's really hard to support a business because you think that they are an ethical, sustainable, compassionate business. And then you're like, oh, they actually have this whole animal side where they are, utilizing leather or selling meat products. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it becomes a little challenging like that. And I find even with going to restaurants these days, I don't necessarily want to go to a restaurant that simply has a vegan side menu when they're selling all this other stuff because my dollars matter. And, that's something conscious consumers know. They're like, no, my dollars are a vote. They're a
Yes.
choice.
Yeah.
And where I spend them makes a difference. So when we can spend them in the way that we believe, it makes more sense. It's just, oh,
Right.
okay, then I'm kind of living the life. I'm talking the talk, walking the walk, and all of that. So let me ask you a question, because this is my favorite question for entrepreneurs. Can you share a particular success story or milestone, or I like to say win, that you're really proud of since you launched your business, or maybe one you've had in the last 90 days?
I feel like my big milestone, because I have not been open for that long, but it was really reaching that 1 year mark and doing well in that 1 year mark, and seeing in this time that's passed since then, just seeing the year over year growth, that to me was really big. So, because sometimes you feel like, oh, this isn't going, so fast, or oh, maybe it's not going as great. But then you look back and you're like, wait a second. Not only have I been here, I've passed what most, I forget the statistics, but they're very, very high of how many businesses fail in the first year. So once you pass that and then you pass the 5-year mark, I know that's another one. So that was really big to me. But in addition to that was seeing that just it's growing. Like that's really good to be able to see that it's definitely growing. It's definitely on the right track. People like my business. People are supporting my business. So really, that's the biggest milestone, I would say.
Well, that's a good milestone, making it to a year and understanding, you took the time and the effort. And once again, like we said, had the patience to make it. And now we're looking forward to the 5-year mark. I think you're right on track, Nicole. And, just going back to what you've been able to build with your vegan, sorry, I keep saying it wrong, green vegan bags.
It is
So from
long.
green vegan bags, I think you've built a really beautiful marketplace of a variety of different products, including stuff for men, which is great because I think sometimes men might feel a little bit pushed to the side. We're very focused, I think, on fashion a lot of times with women about handbags and things like that, which traditionally, let me just say, for women, but of course, gender neutral. Men can carry bags as well. In fact, I appreciate it when a man's carrying a bag because then they can carry more stuff for me,
Yeah.
but also that you had this whole section that was devoted to men and wallets and things like that, I think was a very smart move. So, again, going back to just your commerce, e-commerce experience and your retail experience, just beautifully done. Let me go back way, way back, because if we were talking about you do have a background in e-commerce and retail, what were you doing at that point before you started this business? What were you doing?
Putting together stores on Shopify and the marketing and like the merchant center and Google Ads and things like that. So
Were these stores for yourself or for other
no,
clients?
no, for other clients. And also before that, I had worked in retail for a long, like physical retail for a very long time. In like clothing and jewelry, and I had managed stores. So I had a lot of, customer experience and everything like that that really transfers over to e-commerce, but there's just more technical stuff in the e-commerce. Otherwise, it's all basically the same.
Yeah, and I think you had the best training platform ever, just building sites for other people and understanding what an e-commerce site really entails. Because that's another thing I've seen business owners stumble on. They're like, I don't really know how to go to that next step. And it's immediate like, do I just hire somebody to do this? And there are these really great do-it-yourself tools. So we call sites like Shopify a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. Makes it very easy to put together a platform for your business. As I said before, I come from a background in web design, so I'd love to see where that whole marketplace and system has evolved to. Because back in the day, you had to hire somebody like me, and it was not cheap. And now you can have an idea, launch it yourself, and also use it as a testing ground to be able to see, is this a product that the market needs? Is there a market out there? How do I differentiate it? It gives you a really great place to almost play in the space that you want to be in with very little overhead or financial input, which is, very smart on these WYSIWYG kind of sites. And I really love that. And I want people who are listening to this podcast to understand it's really easy for you to develop your own platform out there using something like Shopify or Wix or Squarespace. Squarespace actually is my favorite right now for just doing a business model that's not e-commerce based. So, it's out there. So let me just ask you then, as far as like the landscape of the ethical and vegan fashion evolving in the next few years, where do you envision green vegan bags in the future? Where do you see yourself going with this?
I see myself growing into selling a lot of different, into having a lot of different types of sustainable vegan products that people might struggle with right now, so they can get everything in one store. I think that that's a big issue, is that people have to go to different sites to buy things that are especially for sustainable vegan, and you can't always tell what is what. So I do see this growing with more accessories and more products that I keep hearing that are hard to find. So that I think is hopefully I would like to be, I don't really know the name, but I would like to be the place that you can go, that you know you're going to get stuff that's sustainable and it's going to be vegan, and you can just get all the stuff you need there and call it a day and not have to, search around or spend any more time on it.
Exactly. So you would be the Amazon of the vegan, ethical, and compassionate, sustainable marketplace, I guess, shopping offering for people. In fact, it's a little
Yeah,
bit of a shame that Amazon already took the name, because Amazon really should be the name of a vegan business,
right. It
or a
should be.
sustainable business.
And yeah, Amazon, not really, because Amazon is like people, anybody can go there and sell. And I'm sure, as you know, there's like tons and tons of counterfeit stuff on Amazon, and you don't know what you're getting there. So that's definitely something that I don't like, is when people can just come on and sell whatever they want, because there's no oversight there of what they're selling.
Yeah,
They
that's
say
very
there is,
true.
but there's not.
No, that's actually very true, and that is also something that I am very, sad about what has happened with Amazon, because I did really used to like them back in the day, but
Mhm.
I was meaning more towards this the fact that they offer so many different
Yeah.
things, and just makes it easier to sell. But you're right, it goes back to being able to really tell, where does the product come from? Is it really in line with your business, and is it a quality product? Because back in the day, if you said like a vegan leather, people were automatically like, oh, it's going to be cheap vinyl crap.
Mhm.
And we've come so far beyond that now to really beautifully made products that last a long time, they look great, and oh, by the way, no animal was killed in the process of it. I'd really like for someday in the very near future for it to become more of a status symbol, for it to be not animal leather, instead of like, oh, is that a leather bag? It's like, oh, it's vegan leather. And then people's eyes light up more. That would be
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I would hope that one day it's going to be the default. That's going to be
Exactly.
the default. And then maybe there won't be any more animal leather. That's really ultimately what I would love to see.
Yeah, well, I think we definitely, between people like me and you and all the other amazing businesses that I've met, even just on the PETA Business Network, we're definitely moving in that way. It's like we're educated now. We understand where our actions have taken us, and we can make different choices. So, you know what, Nicole, this has been so much fun to talk to you. I feel like we're so aligned on so many different things,
Yeah.
not just our backgrounds. If you guys are watching the actual video, you'll see Nicole and I have very similar like color schemes and everything. But I really, again, was so excited to see your business and see how you're growing. And I'll definitely be shopping on green vegan bags for the holiday season. And just to let people know where they can find you, tell us what the website is and how people can find you.
Well, you can go to greenveganbags.com. That's the easiest way. You can find me there. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Instagram, you can find me at green vegan bags.
Again, having that beautiful SEO name, you nailed it, Nicole. I'm just like,
Thank
she
you.
got it. So good, so good. So all of the links will be in the show notes for anyone listening out there and wants to go immediately check out what is going on at Green Vegan Bags. Check out more about Nicole and her journey. I just want to say, Nicole, thank you so much. This has been a really fun conversation, and I love what you're doing.
Great. Thank you. It was so nice meeting you.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.